Okay, so let's try and understand what we will be building together, right? So we will basically be working on an interactive file management interface using Gradio, right? Now, the best thing is to understand the different artifacts that we have here. So we have a user, right? Where the user is actually working with Gradio. So previously you might remember that every time a user was directly interacting with the Python application, you were doing a Python and you were executing the Python file. Not anymore. You'll directly be interfacing with Gradio this time. And for AI framework, we'll be making use of LangChain. And for LLM, we have got Gemini. And the file system or the MCP server that we'll make use of is the file system MCP server. Now, we discussed at length about the file system MCP server, I believe in our Llama index lesson. So you can go ahead and check that. And obviously this file system MCP server actually interacts with the file system itself, right? So if you want to understand the real workflow, how it happens is it starts from the user interaction. So the user interacts with the system via a Gradio interface, right? In the Gradio interface, like they can input natural language queries like list all files in the folder or whatever you want to do in terms of your natural language with the file system. Then we have a Gradio UI layer, right? So the Gradio captures the user's queries and sends it to LangChain. So basically your Gradio is actually sending it over to LangChain. And then we talk about the LangChain orchestrator, right? Again, we've already discussed quite a lot on LangChain. So LangChain is basically your central controller that receives the user's query, passes it to Gemini LLM. So the large language model that we have here is Gemini, right? So, and Gemini, as you know, is a powerful LLM and that interprets the user input. And obviously, then some kind of tool invocation will happen, right? So it sends the tool invocation instructions back to LangChain and the tool call to file system MCP server will happen. So LangChain based on Gemini's output. So if you see LangChain based on Gemini's output makes a tool call to the file system, right? So it makes a tool call to the file system MCP server. So this server understands the specific file related commands like list, move, rename, all these different commands, right? And then the MCP server executes on the file system. So we already know that MCP server or the file system MCP server is the guy which actually can directly talk to file system. Your Gemini is not talking directly to file system. Your MCP server is talking to it, right? So and then the response it goes in the reverse direction. So LangChain will receive the result back. It sends a structured or natural language response back to Gradio. So it comes back to Gradio and then Gradio sends it back to the user. So the Gradio displays it in the user interface and user sees the result in a friendly conversation form. So I think the aim is that we'll build this interactive file management interface and you'll see that you will actually get a proper web page where you will have a chatbot where you will be interacting with your file system with the help of file system MCP server. So I've actually created a step-by-step document for you folks. So you can just take this document and go step by step and work along with me, right? In that I've actually described the entire scenario of what we just had a look at the interactive file management interface. Then I've spoken about a bit of an overview what this MCP server does and some key features. You can read about it and some prereqs. Like I won't go into detail because we've already looked at most of these every time. You need the UV package manager, you need the Google API key, right? Some Python dependencies because this time we are using Gradio. So obviously we need the Gradio library, which is the web interface framework. Obviously you need MCP library, the LangChain MCP adapter because you're going to use LangChain for MCP. We have the LangGraph because you need to create your agents here, and we will have the LangChain Google Gen AI library because of the interaction between LangChain and Gemini. And we obviously need the core LangChain library for the core LangChain components. And it talks about the environment setup, like you need the Google API key, you need the file system MCP server, which is anyways automatically installed via npx. And by now, I believe everybody of you will have the pip install UV on that. Let's go ahead and create our project environment. So what we'll do is we'll go to our Visual Studio Code and I'll say open, and I'll probably create a new folder. I'll say MCP Gradio, right? I say open, I go to my terminal. Now pip install UV is already there, I'm aware of it, so we can just simply start basically creating our project, new project. With this command, we're just initializing our project, which is UV init Gradio MCP file assistant project, and then we just simply cd into this project, right? Which is good. I can close this, I can go back to my document, and then we need to install the required packages or libraries. Very important, right? So what all packages do we need? I've already spoken about it, so just simply copy paste, and when you copy paste you might see that some spaces might appear, so you can easily correct it. So we are talking about the Gradio, we are talking about MCP CLI, we are talking about LangChain MCP adapters, the LangGraph, and that's it really. So you will see that, as we've already discussed, it will actually create a virtual environment for you, and this kind of folder structure would be created. Now the other thing is that you would need an environment file with the Google API key, and then you can also bring the Python file, which I've already given to you guys in the resources section. You can just simply copy it over, create a .env file, and then we should be good to understand the code. So don't go anywhere. Okay, so it's now time to actually get an understanding of the code that we'd be executing. So let's go through these different artifacts one by one. So the first part is actually all about importing our libraries and talking about the different dependencies. So the very first library that you see is Gradio, right? That's the most important library for the entire course module as such, right? Because we are learning Gradio with MCP. Then it talks about various MCP modules like client session. We have stdio client. So these basically enable starting a connection to an MCP server over stdio, right? So we are using stdio input output. Then you can see reference to LangChain MCP adapters, .tools, load MCP tools. So guys, you might remember from our LangChain lesson that this library helps you to convert MCP server tools into LangChain compatible tool objects. Then yes, for creating your agents, we are using create react agent, right? If you see, we are having the create react agent, right? It is coming from LangGraph. So it wraps your LLM and the converted tools into a react style agent that can both. So react, guys, remember, yes, RE stands for reasoning and act stands for the action side of the things, right? So that's why we call it a react agent. Then there is also a mention of the chat Google generative AI, right? So which is coming from LangChain Google Gen AI. It helps you to interface with the Google's Gemini LLM via LangChain because it's part of the LangChain library. So it's part of the LangChain Google Gen AI library, right? Then moving on, so I've kept some suppressions. So here I can, you can see I'm just suppressing some standard errors. So it helps me to redirect the standard error stream to dev null, useful for silencing verbose or irrelevant log outputs, because without this sometimes you see there are a lot of irrelevant outputs that come which you are not interested in. Then we have the load.env, as we know. So all you need to do is you need to have a .env or environment file, and it picks from there. And then what we are going to do is we are going to initialize basically our LLM model. So if you see, I'm using the LLM model as Gemini 2.5 Pro. You could be using Gemini 2.0 Flash, 2.5 Flash, whatever model is available with you, you can change it accordingly. And so it helps you to construct a Gemini 2.5 Pro instance via LangChain's interface and ready to be used by the agent, right? Then it's very important server parameters, and you might have to change it accordingly. This clearly shows that the MCP that we are using is the file system MCP server, and this is the allowed directory. You guys will have to change it accordingly, right? Then what we are doing is we are basically giving some global state variables, and we are setting like agent is set to none, loop is none, loop ready is false, and chat history is initialized to the in-memory chat message history, right? So agent now you can understand is it will store the initialized React agent. Loop is basically the background async loop object. So basically it runs in an asynchronous manner. Loop underscore ready is basically a flag to signal when the background loop is up. And chat underscore history maintains the ongoing chat context. And then we work on the startup of the background async loop, right? This is our function that we are defining, which helps to start the background event loop, right? So what it does is basically creates an asynchronous IO event loop in a separate thread, so the synchronous Gradio UI can interface with the async LLM calls and tool invocation. Very important step that we are doing here. Then we are going to set up our agent. So it's again an asynchronous call, if you see, with stdio client and all. So what we are doing as part of this is it helps you to start the file system server via stdio. So if you see here, I'm calling the stdio client and server params, which is the MCP server, right? And we are initializing it, and we are giving tools is equal to load MCP tools and as session. And then you are basically creating your agent, and it should print that agent is ready. So session.initialize actually helps you to establish an MCP session. Then it helps you to load all the available tools using the adapter library, and constructs a React agent combining Gemini and file system tools, and also keeps the connection alive via a never ending event, right? So we are going keeping it like that so that the connection is always alive, right? Then we talk about our function, which is for chat handling, right? So here what we are doing is it helps to add the user into chat underscore history, sends the context to the React agent via a invoke, right? If you see, I'm using a invoke here, right? Where I'm giving the messages and calling the loop, right? So, and it also waits for the result with the timeout, and extracts the AI's reply, appends it to the history, and returns it to Gradio, right? Here if you see, I'm getting the response, right? And then we basically talk about our Gradio part, which is quite important. So here what we have done is, if you see, I have actually taken an image. You guys can take your image, any image that you have. I'm giving a label, something like MCP Gradio, and this is all, right? To be honest, to give you a look and feel of the user interface, I'm just calling gr.chatInterface, right? So, and I'm giving a title, and when we execute the program, you'll see that, and the function is to chat, ask questions about your files, and type as messages. Simple code, and you will see that when we actually utilize over there. So it's all it is doing is it's doing a UI construction. So it uses the blocks to assemble UI components. It is giving a static header image and a chat widget hooked to the chat, right? And then we talk about our main function, which is just starting the background loop. It starts the background asynchronous loop thread. It waits until the loop ready is set to true. It schedules the setup agent in the running loop, and it pauses briefly to allow the initialization. And it also launches, if you see, I've given a specific port. It actually launches the Gradio server on port 7860, right? So I think slightly long video, but it was important to give you a good understanding of what we are actually doing. So it's basically pretty simple. All you are doing is you are creating a React agent, and you're using the file system MCP server, but within the Gradio kind of user interface that you will get. So in the next video, I will actually execute this program, and then you can actually see how it looks like. Thanks for watching. So time has finally come to actually execute the code. So guys, you can easily get the code from the resources section. Just simply copy from the resources section and paste it over here as shown in the as a structure. So it should be inside the actually parent directory, and this is my gradio_mcp.py. Now, a few things that you need to be aware of, or some prereqs that you need to do before you run the code are you just kind of need to activate your environment. Just do source.venv bin activate so that you get and you are in the right directory. Otherwise it might show you that you are still in the base directory, but once you do the activation it will show you that you are in the right directory, which is Gradio MCP file assistant project. Good. The other thing is you need to create a .env file. Now again, I'm telling you, we've discussed at length in previous videos, but you need to set your Google API key and give the API key. And from where you get this, you just basically need to go to your Google AI Studio, and from there you can just simply copy it. As you can see in this case, I've copied it from here. Right, all good. And then yeah, once you are ready, just simply do a Python. Just give the name of your file, which is gradio_mcp.py. Right, now you will see that it will create the agent, it will start the MCP server for you, and it should give you an interface, a Gradio interface, where you can interact with your LLM models. Right. Okay, so as you can see, first of all, it runs on a specific port, as we actually understood in our previous video, that you'll be using the port 7860. If you scroll down, it should be here. So server port is 7860, so it's accessible via 7860. It clearly states that secure MCP file system server is running, right? All good. The allowed directory, right? So this allowed directory is inside my in the path that I have given, the path that it should, yeah, if you see users should deploy Gradio MCP, this is my allowed directory, and it says agent is ready. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk to this agent. So I click on this and I actually clear few things. Yeah, so if you see, it's actually come up in this format, right? It shows file assistant. Here I'm getting my image, the image that I had placed. In my if you might remember, in the Gradio we had specifically given a PNG file. This is again, it shows okay what I'm using, file assistant, and it says ask questions about your files, right? So just look at it. It's a very nice looking interface that we have created just with minimal lines of code, probably just 10 lines of code inside Gradio, right? So I'll say hello. The first thing is I'm just saying hello to the agent, and it says, okay, I'm a helpful assistant with access to a variety of tools. It knows that I have tool which talks to files and directories. Really good. I'll say, okay, create me a travel plan for 5 days visit to Kerala, India, and store in my system, right? I'm just giving it in a very normal way. Create me a travel plan and store in my system. Like, I'm not saying any specific directory or something. Let's see what it says to me. So right now it's actually talking to the LLM. So LLM is actually creating that say travel plan, and it knows that the LLM or the Gemini say LLM knows that it has to talk to the specific MCP tool as well. So it says, okay, I have this plan ready to be saved. Please provide the full path and file name where you'd like me, right? So it's given me the entire travel plan, and it says, tell me where you should where should I store it. So I'll say, okay, store in the allowed directories, right? So I'm just saying, okay, you want to store, just store it in the allowed directories, and we already know which is our allowed directory, the path that we had given. So let's see what our agent does. Okay, I can do that. It says the allowed directory is user Kshitij join Gradio MCP. I will save the files in that. Is that okay? It's asking me, yeah. It is that kind of thing, like human in the loop, right? It's asking you, okay, are you good? I have done this work. Do you certify it? I say yes, authorized. Go ahead. That's what the thing with agents is, right? So it says, excellent, the travel plan has been successfully saved to this. Is there anything else I can help you with today? I said, all good. Let's see what it says. It's done the job. I say, all good. You've done the good job. So it should say that, okay, I've done my job. Thank you. And then we can quickly cross-check things as we always do. What is not checked is, yes, not done. So it says, great, have a wonderful day. So let's quickly go into our directory. If you see, this is my allowed directories, and bingo, here I have the Kerala travel plan.txt. And yes, if you see, it's clearly articulated everything what I should be doing, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and bingo, right? That was what we wanted to achieve. We made use of the MCP using the file system MCP server. We used Gemini as a LLM, and we also made use of Gradio to give you a good user interface. Thanks for watching, guys.